Welcome to our webinar. This is Move America, and we are going to be talking about critical technology areas, what changed, and why it matters to the defense industrial base, or as I like to call it, everything you need to know about CTAs without getting lost in a sea of acronyms. Though I have to say, spoiler alert, there will be acronyms. So many acronyms. Look, we work for the Department of Defense here, so acronyms are basically our love language. My name is Rick Ostapovich, which is Polish for I've already taken up half of your screen in the team's participants list. I am the strategic communications guru at Move America. Think of me as your guide through today's journey into the exciting world of defense innovation, where hypersonics isn't just a cool word, and it is cool, but it's a whole career path. All right, so we're going to handle some quick housekeeping items before we dive in, because nothing says professional webinar like making sure nobody accidentally shares their screen while doing some online shopping, particularly if you're going to be shopping somewhere other than Amazon. First off, my colleague Meg, hopefully, if she did things correctly, which she usually does, if she did that, your microphones and your cameras should be off. If yours isn't, Meg is in big trouble, and so am I. And I'm really just kidding about that. Now, look, we do this because we've all been in that meeting where somebody's dog has a very strong opinion about the mailman. And while we love that enthusiasm, we would like to keep today's commentary focused on those critical technology areas rather than critical canine areas. Now, if you want to ask questions during this webinar, I'm going to ask that you please use the Q&A panel, okay? That's that little button that looks like a speech bubble at the top of your screen, and it says Q&A under it. We're going to address those questions at the end, and I want you to ask a question no matter what, because don't worry, no question is too basic. Remember, we are here to demystify this stuff, not make you feel like you need a PhD in aerospace engineering just to understand what DoD is prioritizing. Though I will say, if you do have a PhD in aerospace engineering, we should talk after this. Lastly, I need to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. Look, we're operating here under Maryland's two-party consent law, which means by staying on this call, you're consenting to be recorded. Now, don't worry. As I said, your microphone and your camera is off. So we're basically just recording us talking at you, which is a pretty good deal for you and a questionable deal for posterity. But if you don't consent, we're going to say, go ahead and drop off now. What we're going to do is going to send you the replay link in a follow-up email. We're going to post that to our YouTube channel. And we promise not to have Taylor Swift write a nasty breakup song about how you dumped all of us simultaneously. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Still here? Fantastic. That means you're either genuinely interested in critical technology areas or you're just really good at multitasking. Either way, look, we're thrilled to have you. Let me introduce today's featured presenter, and frankly, the person who actually knows what he's talking about. This is Willie Berges, and we're going to call him, he's a colonel, or former colonel, retired Colonel Willie Berges. He's deputy director of our Rapid Innovation Accelerator in Miami. Look, Willie's resume, it's like a Tom Clancy novel crossed with a Forbes business profile. We're talking 30 years in the Air Force, service in 4 U.S. embassies, including as chief of the U.S. Military Liaison Office in Brazil. That sounds really interesting. Senior defense official in Uruguay, post-military work with FEMA and the U.S. Southern Command, and private sector experience at both Toyota Industrial and Amazon. So basically, Willie has protected America, he's represented America internationally, he's responded to disasters, and he's optimized supply chains. If there were a LinkedIn achievement for most diverse career path that still makes perfect sense, I'm pretty sure Willie would have unlocked it. He's got a BS in electrical engineering from the University of Miami. Go Hurricanes, unless they're playing the Tar Heels. And he's fluent in Spanish and Portuguese. Yes, love to hear that, which means he can tell you about quantum computing in 3 different languages, while I can explain it in barely 1. Now, Willie is going to walk us through what's changed with critical technology areas, why small businesses should care, and how the Rapid Innovation Accelerator Miami, or as we like to call it, RIA-M, you see more acronyms, can help you navigate the defense contracting landscape without needing a Sherpa. For now, Willie, we're going to have you go ahead and unmute yourself and say hello to the folks.
Hello, everyone. Rick, thank you for the introduction. Megan, thank you very much for all the support you provided. Keep me in line here, Megan. Make sure I don't mess up. And probably one of the things, the reason why it's so diverse, maybe because I can't hold a job. That could be the reason why. But thank you. Uh, um, uh, so.
Oh no, you're not getting started yet. You're not getting
Okay,
started
not
yet.
started yet. That's
Nope,
right.
nope,
That's the
nope.
see. There
Just
you
saying.
go, Rick. There you go. I'm
Look,
messing
just
up
having
again.
you. I'm just having you say hi. That's enough for now. I'm not done with my whole spiel yet, so I'm gonna push you to back to the Terry Crews position off the side of the stage. I'm gonna jump back on center stage, and I'm gonna try to continue to wow Simon Cowell and the rest of the judges for this version of Move America. Calm guy has talent. So, Willie, thanks so much. We're so glad that you're here to join us. All right, so before we get into Willie's presentation, I would just like to add a little more context about Move America before we dive deeper into those CTAs. So May, go ahead and put that to the next slide. And let me tell you about, okay, so let me go through the agenda first of all. Again, we're going to introduce Move America. Willie's going to introduce RIA-M. We're going to talk about the CTAs. He's going to define what an emerging technology is. He's going to talk about the importance of CTAs to small business, how the CTAs are important to Move America and RIA-M clients, and how they help the defense industrial base, how RIA-M supports use of CTAs to support clients competing for awards, proposals, and contracts, alignment of CTAs in the South Florida or RIA-M community, your resources, and then, of course, your Q&A. Remember, go ahead and use that Q&A panel. All right, now let me talk a little bit more about Move America. So what is Move America? Great question. Glad you asked. Even if you didn't ask, I'm going to tell you anyway, because it's literally my job. Move America is the organization you call when you're a small business with cutting edge technology, but have no idea how to navigate that Byzantine labyrinth that is the federal defense contracting arena. We're kind of like a GPS for the defense industrial base, except instead of saying recalculating every time you miss a turn, and you say recalculating a lot, we actually help you figure out which exit to take before you miss it. Now, look, we do four main things represented by these lovely icons, right? We've got research and development. We advance technologies to expand national security capabilities. So think of us as the people who help bring tomorrow's defense capabilities to the warfighter today, instead of a decade from now when they're already obsolete. Then we've got consortia development and management. We did a webinar about this recently. Go check it out on our YouTube channel. We increase federal market access for functionally relevant suppliers. Translation, we help businesses that should be working with DoD actually get into work with DoD rather than being stuck outside the fence wondering how to get in. Business intelligence and assessments. Look, we are constantly building innovative networks that serve as infrastructure for technology development. We're connecting those dots between government needs, industry capabilities, and academic research. We're basically playing matchmaker, except instead of finding you a date, we're finding you a defense contract. And we've got industrial-based development and management. We conduct research and deliver technical assistance to improve supply chain resilience. Because guess what? A strong military can't exist without a strong defense industrial base. It's like trying to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich when you're out of both peanut butter and jelly. Call it a sandwich all you want, but it's really just sad bread smushed together. If you go to the next slide, we're going to talk to you about who we work with. It's a three-legged stool of innovation: government, industry, and academia. Government, we work with DoD and other related agencies to solve critical challenges to America's industrial base and supply chain. Someone has got to figure out how to get the right tech to the right people at the right time. Then you've got industry. Look, we're the trusted, impartial companion that is going to help businesses identify and build what America's industrial base needs to stay competitive. We're like Switzerland, but with better market intelligence and fewer cuckoo clocks. Then you've got academia. We deploy leading academic experts in science and technology to provide sound guidance and practical solutions, because sometimes you need someone with a doctorate to explain why your brilliant idea will or won't work before you go spending $1 million to find out the hard way. And we've got operating locations in the DMV, Dearborn, Miami, Rhode Island. Basically, we've got eyes and ears around the globe and across the country, from the Motor City to the Magic City. And here is the best part. For small businesses working with our Rapid Innovation Accelerators, like the one we have in Miami where Willie works, consultancy service, that's free. You get it right. FREE, free, as in $0, as in, why aren't you already signed up for this? All right. Willie's going to take us through the meat and potatoes, or if you're like me and following a carnivore diet, just the meat of today's presentation. Willie, now it's your time to talk, so go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Rick. And again, thank you for keeping me in line and keeping me moving along. One, it's a pleasure to present to you. I'm going to stay at it's going to be a brief overview. I'll stay at the 50,000 foot level, as we said in the Air Force, to make sure we cover all the top terminology. And then hopefully, if there's more detailed questions, we'll do that. I also want to say that my colleagues are online. Solomon Stavis is director of the RIA, and David Canafo, who's the critical emerging technology, which is a term we'll talk about here, coordinator. And they're online too, so they'll help answer any questions that you may have about what we do here in Miami. So why did DoD support the creation of a Rapid Innovation Accelerator in Miami? And it's written there. I'm not going to read to you right there. You can see the words there. I just want to emphasize again, Florida's innovation ecosystem, right? They think in South Florida, there is an innovation ecosystem and they want to tap into it. We don't always have access to it. And then you see where they say about access and succeeding in federal contracting opportunities, right? But again, advancing U.S. national security priorities, that's always going to be the key. And that's going to be a theme that you're going to see throughout their presentation. Now, one of the things that we always do is, and my boss is always asking me, Mr. Earl, and Move America, is are we aligned with the strategy? And yes, right? We are implementing the OSBP strategy, the Office of Small Business Program strategy says they want to implement a unified approach for small businesses. So that's by having the RIA Miami allows us to do that. They want to align with national security priorities. Mr. Earl is always beating me up, make sure that our companies understand, right, that to meet the requirements of the warfighter and the strengthening awareness of government opportunities. And we say government on purpose, right? Because, you know, national security could be Department of Defense, but it could be the Department of Homeland Security. It could be Department of Energy, Homeland, Commerce also has an important part of it. So all these agencies have an important. So even if it's not a defense direct, we can help work with you if it's another agency. And as Rick put it much better than I would, this is a service for free, a consultancy service. So thank you, Megan. So now let's talk about critical technology areas here a second. And we said there's a change, and I'll tell you later on what is a change. But first we're going to go into them in the critical technology area, and these are what's listed there, right? And you know, the Office of Undersecretary of War, Research and Engineering, and that's going to be important. We'll highlight that here in a second. It wants the United States military to remain the most lethal and dominant fighting force, right? They're committed to bringing cutting edge technologies that meet the urgent demand of today's war fighters. And then what they did was they identified the critical technology areas to focus these efforts, right? And if you read the strategy documents, it says this represents the forefront of innovation to deliver immediate, tangible results, the speed of relevance. You'll hear that over and over again. If you hear the Secretary of War talk, he'll always say it that way. And they want speed of relevance right now. As you can see, these are very 6 broad areas, right? And you can fit an elephant through all these different areas. And what they're saying is, and here's another part that I said at the beginning, this is handled by the research and engineering, right? So research, what they're saying is they're telling the private sector and small businesses, this is where we want you to focus on your research. This is the priority for the Department of War for all the reasons I've already stated. And they're guiding you. Remember, acquisition is done in a different director, a different department, right? Now, obviously, acquisition will be aligned with what research and engineering is asking the small business to do. But you won't see acquisition requirements and proposals listed like this and saying, well, give me the applied artificial intelligence requirement here, or give me the product, right? This is just a kind of a guide to allow, if you're a small business and you want to do some research, or you're in this area, this is where research engineering are handled. There used to be 14, and now there's 6. And I'll tell you here in a little forward here in the briefing why that changed from 14 to 6, right? So for example, right, when you see applied artificial intelligence, right, they're saying is, okay, we want our command and control systems, right? You can imagine the amount of information that flows in and out. So there could be different AI applications that could apply in any of the command and control systems, right? It doesn't define a requirement for a contract with DoD. It just talks about in general. I used to work logistics in the beginning of my military career. So of course, and then I worked for Amazon, right? Would DoD benefit for some of the logistics or innovations that companies like Amazon or small businesses have developed to help maintain the database, right? Because they want to make sure they have access to critical resources, right? Whether it's chips, critical minerals, and all that, and to make sure it gets to the battlefield. When you talk about quantum, battlefield information dominance, well, yeah, that's a great title, and what it means, right? But what you see there, when they're saying modernizing communication and sensing technologies, right? How do I make sure that the information and the significant amount of information is provided to an AWACS aircraft, which is like a radar aircraft, to a soldier on the ground, to people on the battleship, right? To the sailors on the battleship at the same time, right? So there's many applications that the private sector has that maybe could help them in those areas. I'll give you an example. We have a client right now that actually is not even through a contract, but they were helping DoD through a subcontract where they were providing, if you have military people going out to X country and they're using cell phones, and you use the local chips or the local cell phone chips, well, that's maybe compromised, especially if you have Chinese companies maybe have balled up the telecommunication infrastructure. So they were providing this service to DoD through a subcontract, but you could imagine, and they are very unique and innovative in how they do it, and the Department of Defense was interested. So there's many areas that you could fit through all these 6 areas. They're not meant to be the all be all in a sense on acquisition. Again, this is research and engineering, but a lot of the programs that we'll talk about here in a second are in research engineering. Next slide, please. So Rick and Megan gave me some questions, homework, and and I'm going to try to answer these and just touch on it. But like I said, we've touched on some of these. And first of all, what is important to CTAs for small businesses? Well, I kind of already touched on it, right? You need to focus on building requirements, right? Mr. Earl, we had a meeting with him today, our director of Move America, and he was saying, you got to help these small businesses make sure they understand the requirements of the warfighters and understand how they can meet that. Remember, these requirements are maybe the Army, the Navy, the Air Force are building things, and these are acquisition requirements. They won't read like the CTA, right? But the CTA gives you the focus of where they're hoping for innovative technologies to come into the Department of Defense. And then, so for example, this research programs that I'll even talk about here later on, but Small Business Innovation Research, that's SBIR, Small Business Technology Transfer. There's a National Security Innovation Network for academia that help out. There's awards. There's this famous DoD organization called DARPA, Advanced Research, that does research on things that the military is not even thinking about, that you may be thinking in the private sector as a small business. So again, the CTA is a good guide if you're doing research or you're trying to come up with an innovative product, because it does tell you where they want you to focus your research on. The second question that Megan and Rick were providing to me, what is important to critical technology areas to Move America and RIA, right? And how does it help the defense industrial base? Part of my military career, right, I ended up working a lot on strategy. And I always say, and we'll have the links at the end, go to the strategy documents. Department of War has the acquisition transformation strategy, national security strategy, and it'll tell you why and why we are supposed to revitalize defense industrial base. So if you go to the national security strategy, there's a paragraph, and there's, by the way, it's all online. We gave you the links. But reviving our defense industrial base, right? They want a strong, capable military that cannot, they say a strong cannot exist without a strong, capable defense industrial base. So they show it by saying the huge gap that demonstrates in recent conflicts between a low-cost drone and a missile. I mean, look at the technology and the amount of cost in those two, right? And DoD knows that Department of War, DoD can't focus or get the solutions to all these things. And that's why they need a strong defense industrial base. And the strategy goes on and says, in particular, we must provide our warfighters with a full range of capabilities, ranging from low-cost weapons, can defeat the most adversaries, up to the most capable high-end systems, and for conflict with a sophisticated enemy, right? So again, they're calling out to the defense industrial base to come up with this. And then if you go to there's another document that we have a link to, and we'll show you the links at the end, the acquisition transformation strategy, right? So you have all these strategy documents, and it starts coming down eventually to a planning document, that we have for warfighting. But what you'll see now is, okay, now you have the national security strategy, the acquisition transformation strategy, right? Acquisition. Now, we're not necessarily talking research engineering, says, we want more companies to build military equipment, make easier for new ones to join in and come up with better ideas, work faster to win contracts, deliver results faster. So they said that the industrial base was pretty much 51 prime vendors following the Cold War. Now they're just down to, in the big categories, to 5 prime contractors. So you can imagine that's not good. That's not a strong defense industrial base. And that's part of the reason. We'll come back to why does the RIA-Miami here exist, and the clients is Department of Defense is trying to say we need more smaller companies to get in quicker and faster. And they think in South Florida, or again, we're not geographically constrained, but just having accelerators all over the United States may help small companies get into the defense industrial base faster, right? So for example, when they mentioned there's 51 prime vendors, there used to be 51, they're down to 5. Another program that is for another briefing, and Rick and his team have all these, they'll tell you how to get to all their webcasts and things like that. There's a program, if you're a small business and you've never heard of Mentor Protege program, is to help small businesses team up with a prime contractor in the hope that small businesses eventually will become a prime contractor. And I'm oversimplifying this. Again, this briefing is on a different subject, but if you have not heard about that program, look it up. You can Google it, and then also look at our webcast and the podcast. And my colleague Carolyn Campbell has done several presentations on this. Another question is, what is the importance of the CTA to Move America and RIA-Miami, right? So our job is to help them focus, right? I need small businesses to understand. Now, there are times where you may have a solution that we're not even thinking of. That's why DARPA exists. That's why I use that example, right? But also, there are times where we need the small business to understand their requirements. And you're going to have to help meet these warfighter requirements and all these programs that exist, and why we exist is to help you focus on that. And then if you're doing research or you have some innovative product that has not built up, it's still in the concept idea stage, our research and engineering community, right, where the CTAs came from, will help startups, right? So our job is to help you get into that community. And those are the different programs we mentioned earlier about small business innovation research and technology transfer. Again, the end goal is to meet warfighter requirements. And sometimes, again, as a former colleague, a DoD person, right, or a military officer, when we say warfighter, that doesn't mean only the guy with the gun, right? It means the mechanics, the pilots, the logistics officer, the supply officers, they're all part of the war fighting, right? There are some that we'll say called the tip of the spear, right? Those are the ones with the guns and going in to get the bad guys. But the whole defense industrial, the whole Air Force is supporting, right, that specific operation. The other thing I wanted to highlight. So, for example, they also say the department will also drive greater competition by providing increased testing capacity, competitions, and exercises. So, you may have an innovative product that we will want to test it, and there's competitions, exercises, and those type of programs. We can help guide you and find those competitions and exercises. I'll give you an example. We have a unit, a organization called Defense Innovation Unit. You can look it up. Their job is to find commercial solutions and integrate them into defense, right? And even when I worked at Southcom and I was a business outreach coordinator, there was it's a program called Replicator. You can Google that and find out. It's drones. They call them, us in DoD, we always have these acronyms, but ADA2, which is, all domain attritable, autonomous, right? Meaning attritable means it's a low cost drone. It can disappear and it's not a high cost thing. Again, that theme about, we want low cost solutions also, not just high cost solutions. And Southcom was saying, okay, maybe we can get those products here in this region and test them out in this region, right? So there's many opportunities in Department of Defense to test them, and there's different programs. We'll touch on some other ones that I mentioned earlier later on. Next slide, please. So remember I mentioned there used to be 14 and now there's 6. But why is that? Because there's another list. Department of Defense, we have lists, lots of lists, right? But my colleagues, Rick and Megan, asked me, hey, can you help me define the term emerging technology, which has been used by the U.S. government in the past, and it's different than critical technology areas? Well, sometimes I like to put the documents and tell you what these sorts of documents so you can double check me and go ahead and do your own research. But the White House, right, they come up with a certain, again, just like a national security strategy, they came up with a critical and emerging technology list, but for all the agencies, right, not just DoD, right? So what you see with critical technology areas are the DoD research and engineering focus, right? But the Department of Energy, Department of Commerce, the Department of the CIA, all the intel agencies, they have different emerging technologies. And so this list, the critical emerging technology list, was a way to capture all the agencies, right? So in the defense, the way we define it is written there on the slide. Novel and rapidly advancing technology show potential for future military relevance, scaled across the force, right? So the White House came up with this list, and this was a critical emerging technology list, which is in a subset of advanced technologies that are potentially significant in the U.S. national security. Again, that's why all these other agencies are also playing part in U.S. national security. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see this was the list, right? And these were the 14 critical emerging technology lists for all the agencies and all the governments. What DoD did, Department of Defense, what we did is that we had pretty much almost 14 of these were listed as our CTAs. However, the new administration came in and it wanted to whittle it down. And that's why the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering then said, you know what, this is good, this is the overall, but we need to focus on these 6 areas and they redefine it. So if you would have seen this list a year ago, our list, the Department of Defense list, you would have seen similar titles, right? Which is still good. You can still focus in these areas as a subset. The critical technology areas is the new research engineering focus, right? And they took it from this and they developed it more. Again, you can see the emphasis on those CTAs. There were emphasis on supporting the warfighter, right? And while these things also support the warfighter, but it's just a subset of that. So that's why you had 14 and now you're down to 6. But the 6 that are defined are very strategic and very broad, while these help us out in a sense they're a little more focused. Remember, there was one called scale directed energy. You had here directed energy. There was one called applied artificial intelligence. Here it's called artificial intelligence. Biotechnologies, right? So research engineering just put probably more meat on the bones to make sure researchers and small businesses understand where we're going. And this is the overall for the list. So what we did in RIA Miami, if the next slide, we said, okay, so all our clients, and this is, again, this is not up-to-date database, it's just a picture in time back in November. We said, okay, where are our clients on which area of the critical emerging technology list, right? Because we felt the CTA was just too wide, too big. So we said, all right, let's break it down into the critical emerging technologies and to show where companies that we're talking to, where they fit in those one. And that's what you see as a pictorial, right? One, we want to make sure, remember, OSBP said we have to be aligned with national security priority, right? And we are. And we can see our clients are aligned in those areas. And that's why we climbed them, we did that. So David Knapfel, our lead on client engagement, he did this for us, and you can see where they're at in those categories, right? And we're still going to use that. So that's why, even though there's two lists, this list kind of helps us kind of burrow down a little bit, while the CTA list may help out our researcher, right, on that. But this helps us further define where our clients are, and that's why I wanted to show you how we use the CET list. And now you know the difference, right? You have a CET list, you have a CTA, right? This CET is still good, but the CTA is what they're asking the research to do. Next slide. So, one of the things I kept mentioning is so many DoD funding opportunities, and that's why OSBP created accelerators, right? Because you may not be aware that you have SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research, Small Business Technology Transfer. You have competitions. The other day, a colleague of mine, David, he actually got a company to go into the competition with Softworks. You have the COCOMs doing. I told you about Defense Innovation Unit, right? They're looking for commercial solutions. So how do you know all these, right? It's impossible. I'm not even going to say that we know all of them. What we do is we help you, right? Since we're a consultancy, we have a lot of people move America that have different experiences, different years. We have a former senior executive civilian that he worked acquisition programs for his whole career. Mr. Earl worked acquisition all his career. We have Vic, who was an Army, worked out Army missile defense. So there are so many people that worked acquisition programs that can definitely tap in. You can help and maybe be aware of all these programs, right? And remember, right, acquisition is different from the research and engineering, right? In a sense that, it won't read necessarily like a CTA, but you're meeting their specific requirements. And you see, and that's kind of how we help, right? We take time to understand your technologies. We match you with the right topics and agency, and we support your proposal and strategy submission. And we've had some successes recently on that. Let's see if there was another. No, next slide, please. So sometimes I'll say, like I said earlier, hey, don't believe me, go ahead, go in there, do your own research, read the national security strategy, read the acquisition transformation strategy, right? Tells you where we're heading with the acquisition strategy. And what you'll see is the national security strategy may be 8 pages. The acquisition transformation strategy will be 50 pages, right? It just, as you come down the line, they get a little more specific. Then you can see the White House document there, the critical emerging technology list, and then the critical technology areas are in the, you can get there through this link, but through ONBP and their research engineering, they'll also have links to it. Let's see, and I think that's it, right, Megan? I think that's the last slide. I was trying, in essence, I wanted you to have a very 50,000-foot level. We can deep dive in specific questions if you want. Myself or anybody can, join in and answer for my colleagues at Move America. But I wanted to give you that picture, right? That if you're doing research and you're a small business and you think you want to work with DoD, you have a guide. You know where you go. And then when you work with accelerators like RIA Miami, we're going to focus on you either doing that research that we mentioned or focusing on meeting the warfighter requirements. And that's what the acquisition part wants you to focus on. And they're going to do everything as possible. As a matter of fact, one thing I did forget to mention, they created, if you're not aware, you can Google this and research, they created an Office of Strategic Capital. So think about this. Defense has an investment office to put capital investment into critical technologies that they need. I'm not going to say that everybody can tap into it. You can go in there. Obviously, it's a new thing. They're beginning to build their budget, and they're going to go for the most critical, the highest of priorities right now. But that's the way we're thinking in defense, right? We're looking. We know that sometimes small businesses need some capital infusion, or a business that's trying to get into an area that's very important, let's say critical minerals, right? And they need strategic capital behind that. So even to that point, they created strategic capital. And even at RIA Miami, we're looking, when we work with our clients, we're going to, one of our tasks is try to help you also find capital investment money, but not easy. I'm not saying we can promise anything, but it's something that we're targeting, we're aspiring to do to help you do that. But one way is getting to know who you are and show you a great product. And when an investor sees that the Department of Defense is interested, hopefully that those connect the dots. But I'll stop there for now, and then thank you for your time.
All right, everyone. Hey, I got to say, Willie has taken us through a master class in critical technology areas. Now it's time for the part of the show where we pretend we know what you're thinking and we answer those questions. So, again, either everyone's perfectly clear and needs no additional information whatsoever, which would be a first in the history of defense contracting webinars, or you all are just shy. So let's go ahead and get those questions popped into the Q&A panel. We do have one from Kelsey. Kelsey says, so how do companies work with Move America if they are not located in Florida?
Well, Move America is actually right there in Maryland, most of it. We have other people all over the U.S., even some overseas. But in reality, right, we're not constrained by a geographic barrier or anything like that. That we're allowed to talk to companies outside. So, we have actually a page, like an intake form page. And if I know we have a website, we'll be working on a website soon. But you can just contact us. And we'll screen, right? We'll screen you. If we need to refer you to someone else, we will. But really, everything just like we're doing this webinar, we can do everything virtually. So obviously, they put us in Miami because they wanted to focus in the South Florida area because they felt there's something brewing here, right? Everybody knows about Austin. Everybody knows about San Francisco. So where else in the U.S. is things are burgeoning up? But Move America headquarters is actually in Maryland, in the D.C. area, right, Rick? That's where you're at.
Correct. We are here in the DMV, as we like to call it. And, the one thing you can always remember is that Move America is wherever you need us to be. Because, again, we are nationwide. We are a nonprofit. We do not just work in the DMV. We do not just work in Florida. We, have Rapid Innovation Accelerators that we've set up. But the big thing to remember is that we're here wherever you need us to be. So all you need to do is reach out to us. Easiest way to get a hold of us. We've got some, as Willie was saying, you've got gogovnow.com, or you can scan that QR code if you want to go ahead and do that and fill out the intake form. You could also email us at communications@moveamerica.org. We are more than happy to make sure that we get that information over to you. So, all right. So we've got one from Jay. Great presentation. So we always like compliments. What are the most common or preventable mistakes organizations make when aligning to a CTA?
So I think I don't want to say mistakes, right? Because you're doing your best, you're doing God's work, you're trying to start your own business, you want to help the United States. So what's wrong with that? There can be no mistakes there. But one of the challenges, I like to say probably better, the challenge you have is, again, meeting those requirements. Do you really understand the requirements? And remember, the CTAs are focused on research engineering, right? Eventually, if you're going to eventually get to a contract or work with the DoD, you'll have to eventually meet those requirements. And clearly understanding the requirements, it can be difficult, right? Even for the best of us, right? So aligning what is the most, again, challenge, not mistake, is aligning to requirements, understanding those requirements. And that's where we can help sometimes, right? Because we can get you in front sometimes of with the DoD resources we can maybe tap into people who have built these requirements, who understand the requirements, and help you guide you on that. If you're doing research engineering, really, I mean, there's so many organizations, Department of Defense, that even if we haven't thought of it, that's why DARPA exists. That's one example. DARPA says, we don't know. Maybe we don't know. We don't know what we're thinking of. You have something that we don't know. And sometimes it's presenting something. We've had people actually in RIA-Miami that have brought a topic out of the blue, and DARPA says, come visit us. We want to hear more about your product or your idea, not even product. Let me say idea. DARPA is more about ideas. So.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, I'm going to ask this question because I get to ask questions because I'm hosting the webinar. I want to ask, you're referring to the CTA list. How often is that updated and released to the public?
I would say, right, it's always pretty much when you have a new administration, right? So it's no coincidence that you have a new national security strategy, because it doesn't happen day one when the new administration comes in, right? Because they got to still work with the old one as they built a new one. So you'll see, and then it's no coincidence that we have a new acquisition transformation strategy. So it just takes a while for the new administration. So you can probably guess that this CTA will hang around into the next administration, and then we'll, the next after the elections, and then we'll see, and sometimes these things stay through various administrations because it makes sense and they leave it alone. So I would say as a minimum through the administrations. All right, because it all boils down from the strategy and the priority that administration has.
Excellent. And then we've got another question from Kelsey. How do you work with Apex accelerators?
No, thank you, Kelsey, for asking that question, because I forgot to mention them, and they're so important partners with our. So think about this, right? Apex accelerators are there to help out you to get into DoD. Well, it sounds like RIA-Miami, right? Same thing. True, but their bandwidth is limited, right? And our niche is try to stay in the critical emerging technology. Not that we only do that, but we're going to try to stay in that area. So look at us as complementing each other, right? Apex accelerators exist, will continue to exist, and it's a great program. Highly recommend to definitely talk to them and stay with them. But you may find yourself, because you're working on an emerging technology issue or something, that they just, they're trying to meet everyone's demand, right? So look at the accelerator as a subset. I don't want to say, I don't know, but it's like not a subset. Let's say a niche outside of what the Apex does, right? We'll do the same things. My colleague David Canafo has helped out many people get their cage code, how to set up their business to work with DoD. He does everything. It's amazing, right? Just like the accelerator does. But he's doing it on a company that's working with us because they have an emerging technology, or they're going to work with DARPA, or they're going to do a small business innovation research. So we're similar, probably more focused, and we're extra bandwidth so we sometimes, and lastly, I want to say, we refer clients to them, and sometimes they refer clients back to us. And that's what Mr. Earl was just asking me this morning about. We were talking about that. And we have a formal process of referring clients to each other.
No, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. So we've got a question. Does all DoD funding tie back to a CTA or to the CTAs on the list?
See, that's a good question. Thanks. No, right? Because here's the thing. When you first of all, let's you say all DoD funding. There are so many pots of money in DoD. Some of my colleagues in Move America know the pots much better, like Carolyn or Kenyatta. But what I you need to look at. Let's look at first research and engineering. Well, when you're talking about research and engineering, that's why you have those programs. Remember that slide with funding opportunities? Well, those would come out of research engineering. Then the Air Force may be doing another program, and they have a different pot of money that they're getting from either sometimes for the Small Business Administration. Actually, a lot of these SBIRs, the money's come from the Small Business Administration. Then you have Southcom, a combatant command like Southcom, Central Command, or European Command. They're doing an exercise, and that's a different pot of money, and they want to test your solution in that exercise. So the answer is, unfortunately, in some of these areas, it's like, it depends. That's a famous answer in the Department of Defense. But you tell me what you're talking about, it depends. Now with CTA, that is research engineering. So most likely it's going to be research engineering funding. And if you're a small business, you're most working small business innovation research. So that will where the money would come from. And that money, by the way, sometimes comes from the Small Business Administration, right? So it's a different pot of money. So that depends. It's a hard question to answer, but the answer is, if you say where, no, it's not one specific pot, and it's different pots. And CTAs are focused on research and engineering pot. Let's use that.
Excellent. And then last question I'm going to have for you for right now, are any of the CTAs given more priority over others?
No, they're not, right? Because and remember, these CTAs are coming from the Army, Navy, Air Force, from all the different commands, logistics and all that. They get together, they agree on it. Research engineering goes back down, even to us when I worked at the Combatant Command headquarters. They'll come back down and say, take a look at this. We want your inputs to build these CTAs. And then those get, filtered based on the administration strategy, and they agreed on these six. There is no party, right? Because if I'm working applied artificial intelligence, it could be for a program in the Navy, while I'm working a contested logistics program that's for the Air Force. So no, don't look at them in that manner. They're all six. The question is for you as a small business is, what requirements or what area, what demand you can meet for DoD? And even if we don't verbalize it, maybe we don't know. Talk to us. There may be something a solution you have that we're not thinking of, and maybe somebody will take a look at it.
All right. Well, the silence continues to be deafening. So either, again, you all understood everything perfectly, or you're just being polite. In my experience, it's usually neither. So now I'm going to ask another question on your behalf. Because, and this is something that Willie, you can answer, or even Solomon, if you wanted to jump in, you can answer. You guys mentioned 190 companies in your database. Are you only helping those companies, or are you actively looking for more?
I'll let Solomon, I know I probably talked a lot. I'll let you chime in on that one.
Sure. Hello, everyone. No, we're actively looking for more. Those are the number of companies that we've come through our funnel, that we've spoken to, that we've assessed, that we've supported, but we have, the more time, and we're happy to support more companies. So please reach out if you're interested. And govnow.com is our website. And Willie, I don't know if you had a chance to mention that, but.
Yep, no, we did mention that. And then I've got another one while you're on, Solomon. How long does it typically take when someone first contacts you guys at RIA Miami? How long does it take from that first contact to actually submitting a proposal or getting matched with an opportunity?
I mean, it depends on how ready the company is. So once you reach out to us on our website, we'll set up a call, typically in the next few days, to assess your qualifications, what you're looking for, and put you in the right direction. If you find an opportunity, typically it takes at least a week, assuming you have a lot of the paperwork ready and to go, to submit that proposal at submission, and then maybe 3 months before you hear back. So it's not terribly long. Of course, these things can adjust. Many times companies have never applied for a government opportunity before, so they need a lot more hand-holding and support when it comes to drafting and making sure everything's in order. In that case, it can take a few months.
Perfect. All right. And then we have a question from Jessica. Would it be accurate to say that RIA Miami is using the 14 area list to categorize current businesses and encourage new businesses to participate in acquisition? And the 6 area list is more abstract for a research focus.
Yes, the 14, right, when we did it that way, it was just to make sure, again, the focus is to make sure that we're meeting requirements, right? So we want to make sure, and we want to show our bosses, right, that the companies we're talking to and we're supporting for free, and is aligned with DoD priorities. So that's why we put it that way. There's no reason to do that. In other words, there's no imperative coming down from DoD. Hey, make sure you do this. It was our way of organizing ourselves, and the CTAs are pretty much areas that we would say, okay, you're doing some research on a project. Take a look at these CTAs, and which one do you think you are now? The proposal for the CT for a research project may come from the Air Force, and they won't necessarily specify you must do this CTA. It doesn't work that way. They'll list a bunch of requirements for the proposal for a research project, and David knows that very well, and he's done it many times. And so that's how it would work for that. So don't look at it as that we must categorize. No, it was just a way to organize ourselves and show our bosses that we're aligning ourselves with the priority of the national security.
Perfect. And then I've got one more that I'm going to go ahead and throw at you. So if you've got somebody who has what they consider a dual use technology, they're developing something for the medical field that could also be of interest to one of the federal agencies somewhere, does that make them more attractive?
Well, every commercial solution, right? Because if you look at a CTA, they had a bio CTA, right? So yes, I mean, in reality, the question again, right, is what national and for defense and also other agencies like Homeland Security, what national security priority requirements you're meeting, and yes, remember I told you about Defense Innovation Unit. Defense Innovation Unit was being run by people from Silicon Valley, specifically chartered to look for commercial solutions. They understand that commercial solutions can be applied for DoD. You don't have to do a lot of research. It won't cost millions of dollars like a new missile. It'll be all ready to go. It's already proven. So yes, we're always looking for. By the way, if you're medical, there's a whole medical command that runs out of Fort Detrick, Maryland. And the name of the medical, I can't remember right now. I know they're at Fort Detrick, Maryland. They're an Army unit. But anyway, there's so many research going on in medical. I worked in Southern Command. We were going to the jungles, tropical forests, and all these things. We had a lot of research going on in all these areas. So they are looking for solutions. And that should not be a roadblock.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to say that's going to go ahead and cover. If we didn't get to your question, it's only because you didn't ask it. But don't worry, we're not going to ghost you. All you need to do, if you have any other questions, you can reach out to the folks at RIA Miami directly. Willie, Solomon, their team, they actually respond. It's like customer service, but it's for national security. So I'm going to say that brings us to the end of today's webinar. So before I go into the congratulations and thank yous and all that kind of stuff like they do at the Oscars, we're going to do just a quick recap before I let you get back to your regularly scheduled Thursday. Now, we have covered the 6 DoD critical technology areas. And yes, we made it through all those acronyms alive, the AAI, the BIO, the LOG, the QBID, the SCADE, and the SHI. We decided how these differ from the broader critical and emerging technologies list, why small businesses should care, and hint or spoiler alert, because this is where DoD is putting its money, and how RIA Miami can help you navigate this landscape for free. And I still can't emphasize that word enough. Now, what should you do next? All right, you see that QR code? Scan it right now. Seriously, scan it. It's gogovnow.com. Don't be the person who attends the webinar, loves the information, and then never follows up. That's like going to a gym orientation and then never actually going to the gym. Look, we've all done it, but let's break the cycle here. I want to encourage you to check out Defense Tech Tuesdays. RIA Miami hosts regular sessions to keep you updated on opportunities, changes, and how to actually win these contracts instead of just applying for them. And then, of course, you could connect on LinkedIn. You could follow at moveamerica.org at moveamerica-org for updates, success stories, and the occasional defense industry meme, which Meg, looks for, finds, and posts. All right, so right now I'm going to say thank yous. A huge thank you to Willie Berges for sharing his expertise today. Willie, you made critical technology areas accessible, understandable, and dare I say, almost fun. Is that even allowed in defense contracting? I feel like we might have broken a rule there.
Yeah. Well, thank you all, and thank you for humoring me and staying awake during the presentation. Thank you, Megan, for all the support, and Rick. Thank you.
Excellent. And then I also want to say thank you to the other incredible team members for helping to make this happen. First of all, Solomon Stavis, whose last name I'm now pronouncing correctly. He's, again, our director of RIA Miami. He's just awesome in the South Florida business community. Thank you so much, Solomon, for being here. And thank you for letting Willie, present today, since technically you are his boss. We want to say thank you to that. Want to say thank you to Meg Pace, our super amazing strategic communication specialist, for getting this set up, managing all the logistics, and making sure that I didn't actually say anything inappropriate when I was finishing up my script. And also want to say thank you to the other folks on the line. We had David, we had Mark, all of our folks. Mark Chisholm is the strategic communications lead for our sister program, or maybe it's third cousin twice removed program. I don't even know, but it's called Project Spectrum. I want to thank him for everything he does to help us, which is actually a lot. David Canafo, who's here. Again, thanks to everybody. And thank you. Yes, you, the person on the other end of this screen. That's who I'm talking to. The person whose camera has been off this entire time and who may or may not have been paying attention while also responding to emails. Look, we see you. Well, we don't see you, but we do appreciate you. Final thoughts. I want to say the defense industrial base isn't just about the big primes anymore. It's about innovative small businesses bringing cutting edge technology to solve real warfighter problems, whether you're working on AI, biotechnology, quantum computing, or something we haven't even thought of yet. There's a place for you in this ecosystem. RIA Miami and Move America exist to help you find that place and succeed in it. We're not just handing out brochures and saying good luck. We're actively working to match your capabilities with DoD needs, help you with those proposals, and guide you through the process. The future of American defense technology isn't being built in some secret government lab. I'm telling you now, it's not. It's being built by companies just like yours. We're just here to help you get through that door. So again, scan that QR code, visit GoGov now, reach out to Willie and the RIA Miami team, and let's make sure the next generation of defense capabilities has your fingerprints all over it. So I want to say, until next time, for all of us here at Move America, stay innovative, stay curious, and remember, somewhere out there, a warfighter is waiting for the technology you're developing. Let's make sure that the warfighter actually gets it. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Remember, we're going to post this back up on our YouTube channel. We'll send you a link, and we want to thank you again for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
If you still have questions, just shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn for monthly newsletters and webinar updates. And check out our website for even more resources and ways to get involved. Thanks for watching.